All right, we're recording, we're live.
Oh, wow.
Welcome, everybody, to the second series of the O2H ChaiTimes. We're delighted to invite so many of you for this. Will be a really fascinating session. And what we're looking to do today is to chart the journey from PhD or kind of a deep science background towards CSO or CEO or co-founder, and to dig a little bit behind the scenes of what it's like on that journey, transitioning from a science or a tech background to a business background, and as well kind of hearing some of the frontline stories of these kind of live in the moment entrepreneurs, and just taking you back kind of 20 years, if I may. And I was in the heat of the dot-com battle with Sunil and my brother. We were one of the hottest tickets in town. When you're a new entrepreneur, you're full of buzz, you're full of excitement at every party. People want to talk to you and find out what you're doing. And then the market fell away from under our feet. And we were about as popular as about toilet flush. And we were teetering on bankruptcy for at least a year and a half. And we did more pivots and reconstructions than we can count. To cut a long story very short, there was a number of battles in there: mental, physical, technical, business, and then my hair went from thick black Indian hair to kind of a wispier, whitier version, which I sport till this day. So I'm interested to hear some of the stories from all of you and your own little battles and journeys as you transition as you make this transition. So over to Fiona first. Tell us a little bit about who you are, your background, and what changes your hair color as an entrepreneur.
Like unintentionally changes hair color. When I was younger, I used to dye my hair quite frequently, but I've given up on that. Anyway, my background, I have a background in computer science, and then I went into bioinformatics. Never planned to start a company, but I was inspired by the work I did in genomics and bioinformatics to use my skills to make a difference. And from my personal experience of having family members with cancer and realizing the big differences between what's happening in the lab and the latest progress to what is actually happening in a clinical setting, I've got very determined to make a difference in the way that cancer is being treated and accelerate the progress of getting new treatments to patients. So that was what started me out. And first incorporating a charity back in 2013, and then after about a year of not figuring out how to get build a software platform as a charity, found out that add a profitable business model to it, then you can spin it out as a commercial company, and then you can raise investment to get it off the ground. So that was what we did in 2014. We started off the journey of Repositive.
And what color was your hair, or what changes, apart from the deliberate hair colors, as an entrepreneur, what changes your hair color? What dresses keep you?
So I'm pretty sure I still have the same hair color.
You're doing better than I did, that's for sure. And you've been through the mill in the last year or so, so you're doing pretty well.
Definitely been through the mill. So the journey of being an entrepreneur and the journey of the company of Repositive, it's been a journey of ups and downs, and some of those downs are very, very stressful. So yeah, I think if I had the genetic predisposition to get white hair, I would probably have it by now.
Well, you definitely deserve some white hair after what you've been through anyway. So well done for hanging on to your natural hair color. Will, yourself?
So going back to my PhD, I was involved in modeling extreme ocean waves and studying how they change direction, bizarrely enough. So that was my sort of crowning moment in terms of the research I did, which I absolutely loved. So I'd always recommend people doing PhDs. I then actually went into commerce. So I didn't go from a PhD actually into anything particularly relevant. I was working in Canada and then had a stint working back in the city in insurance. And it wasn't some time later until I was looking at what was going on in the wave energy sector that I actually got drawn back into the wave energy sector. And I'll come to that later because I know you've got some later questions on what we did wrong. But what we now do is we grow artificial reefs to try to provide coastal protection against waves. So it links very much back to what I did in my PhD. And on top of that, we're trying to create a system that sort of enhances the marine ecosystem and even ecotourism. So it's all linked back to what I was doing as a civil engineer and as a PhD. And then the real twist that we're trying to really get right is we actually want to use the energy from those waves that are causing the coastal erosion to almost like fight back against them. So to use that to power the system that we're using to create the reefs. So as for my hair, well, it's slowly falling out and it's slowly going grey, but I think that's partly age, but it's just long hours. It's the long hours, the stress, it's the work. I can't say anything particular, but I love what we do. So it's it's hard work.
Yeah, there's a trade-off between loving what you do as an entrepreneur and hair loss and change of color. All right, Oliver.
Hi everyone, and maybe a slight counterpoint to Will. I wouldn't recommend everyone did a PhD. I personally loved my PhD, but I knew too many people that didn't love theirs, and I think that comes from whether or not you actually just love the subject. Because when you do a PhD, you're the only person that cares about the piece of work you're doing for somewhere between 3 to 5 years, and the only way that's going to happen and you're not going to get depressed and just entirely burn out is if you love what it is you're doing. So I wouldn't blanket make that rule, although I loved mine and I knew a lot of people that did love theirs.
Can I just add in there, I would agree, but what I think is crucially important is your supervisor. If you've got a good supervisor, your PhD can be really good.
Makes a huge difference as well. Yeah. Anyway, so I did my PhD in I'm the Chief Scientific Officer and one of the co-founders of BIOS Health. At BIOS, we make nervous system interfaces for treating chronic diseases using AI. And I wrote my application to undergrad and my PhD application about making neurotechnology interfaces because that's what I wanted to do since I was sort of 17. So I absolutely love my PhD, and I'm still working on the same subject now, sort of 6 years post PhD. In terms of what we work on with neural interfaces, our sort of primary aims, and maybe for some of you that saw the either the full version or the cut down version of the Neuralink announcement a couple of weeks ago, what BIOS works on is working with all this data that comes out of the nervous system, interpreting it using machine learning, understanding what the nervous system is telling an organ to do during a disease state, and correcting that information in order to treat disease. And so we link nerve activity to specific chronic conditions, and that's our sort of core functionality. What turns my hair doesn't go grey, but it's definitely been going backwards over the last 5 or 6 years. For me, the biggest thing that makes it go grey is I think the thing that no one really tells you about running a company is the responsibility you end up feeling to the team. I started BIOS because I love what we do. I was working on it academically before that, and I started it because I think it's important, and it's important to exist in humanity. And I feel grateful to every member of the company that has joined in on the thing that I cared about a lot. Every single one of those people is smarter than me or better than me at the thing that they do. That's why we hired them, right? And so I feel immensely grateful that people that I look up to have joined the company to work on something I care about. And so I feel incredibly responsible to them. And not to kick us off too dark, but we lost a team member. He passed away. He had a very serious illness 6 months ago, and the extent to which someone who was enjoying their work and that was the last thing they did was incredibly important to me. And I think that's the aspect of starting or running a company that should never be forgotten, is that that early team is your best friends and your family, because they're all the people you're going to work with. But personally, I feel just lucky that they helped me do the thing I love doing every day. So that's what makes my hair go backwards.
I'd second that completely.
I fully appreciate what you're saying, Oliver. We lost a team member 6 months ago who was aged 36 to a heart attack, and he was very much part of the early starting team, and it did feel like losing a family member for us as well. So I echo your feelings there. Myriam?
Yes, so I'm a chemist by background. So I did my PhD in France, and then I moved to Cambridge to work as a postdoc, and been working during my PhD and during my postdoc project on various projects for biomedical applications. So I was always fascinated by how you can build some molecules that can either help you to understand some processes, biological processes, or how you can impact on those biological processes. So I was very passionate about doing that kind of work. And it's actually through a project I was doing at the University of Cambridge on how to improve the delivery of some drugs, in that case for tuberculosis. And that's how my entrepreneurial journey started, because we found something very interesting. So I really love the process of problem solving and trying to find a way of getting something to work. And then I was very much into not just only publishing paper, but also how can I make this working for patients, for instance. And really my journey started because I was then, and that's something we're going to discuss in the next question, but around being part of the Cambridge ecosystem and different accelerator and incubator that help you once you are a scientist and you have an idea. And that's really how it started. So now what we do at Spirea is we work on targeted therapeutics. So the idea is to build a molecule which combines an antibody and a cytotoxic drug payload to kill cancer cell. And we do that in a way that we can really improve their efficacy and safety profiles. So it's all about building a molecule which we want to work best for patients. And I did the transition from my academic career, I would say, to being a CEO upon receiving some Innovate UK funding. So I think it's all been really this transition from, you have an idea about the lab. I really love being in the lab, so I really enjoy my PhD. I really love all my PhD, my postdoc projects, and that's how I started my CEO role. And what made my I think I have some gray hair, even I don't want sometimes to admit it, but I think it's just, when you're a scientist, you have your way of doing things and processing information and making some decision based on data. And when you are a CEO, I think you first of all, you learn a lot of new things, which, you didn't know before. And you have to use more your gut sometimes, rather than just being very rational about every decision you have to make based on data experiments. So that's something sometimes which can be stressful, but it's a nice journey actually to learn this.
So I just want to pick up on something Oliver said actually about, I think when you're a kind of a newish CEO or co-founder, you rely a lot on your network and you bring a lot of friends and colleagues in, and then you sell them a big vision of what you're going to do, because you haven't got a lot to go on. You're a fairly newish company. And therefore, when you go through the ups and downs, sometimes you have to let go of people and resize the team. And this is something that you've been through recently, Fiona. Do you just want to highlight what you went through when you had to kind of reshape the team from the kind of excitement phase to the kind of what I would call maybe the reality phase? And what was that like?
Yes, it's happened, I was just about to say twice, but more like 2.5 times in repositive history that we had to let go of a bunch of people at the same time. So that comes out of the roller coaster of the entrepreneurship. And if the funding doesn't sort out the way you wanted, or if the projections don't add up with what the cash looks like in the bank, well, then you can get to make these difficult decisions where you need to look at, okay, how do we make the company survive at a lower burn rate than what we currently have? And then unfortunately, in a knowledge company like ours, the biggest expense is the salaries of the people. So you end up having to make the difficult decision of letting people go.
And what did you learn from that? what did you learn having hired these people and then having to let some people go or restructure? What do you wish you'd done differently?
So what I learned was that, and maybe you could predict this, but it's not until you see it that you really realize that it was not just me feeling bad for letting them go and say, oh, sorry, it's not because you've done a bad job, it's just that we can't afford to have you here. There was this similar feeling among everyone on the team. So people who lost a job felt bad for losing a job. People who did not lose a job felt bad for not being the one leaving, so that it affect their colleagues and not them. So there was this shared mutual feeling of, this is a bad situation to be in. But
in terms of your business plan, did you feel that you got your business planning wrong, or did you feel that in terms of course, there's an emotional journey that you go through when you're communicating these issues with the people, and obviously there's a lot that goes through everybody's mind. But in terms of because you carry the ultimate responsibility for hiring those people and setting out the vision and the plan. So what would you have changed?
Well, so there's always a lot of things you can say in hindsight. Well, if this speed of acquiring customers had gone up twice as fast, and the cost of running the company hadn't increased so fast, then we would sooner reach a more stable position for the business, right? But these things are only really clear in hindsight, because as you start out, you have to be optimistic. Yeah. Because if you're not optimistic and give it your all and say, okay, let's do it, let's go for the prize at the end and give it your all, then you just don't have a chance of getting there. And sometimes giving it your all as a company means that you hire more people to put in at certain positions to make sure you can move faster. But of course, you have to be cautious as well not to overdo it, because if you overdo it too much too frequently, then you end up in this situation where you have to then cut back afterwards, and that's a very painful situation to be in.
So I'd like to yeah, go on.
I'd like to sort of add to Fiona's point that part of starting a company and building a company is people talk about sort of testing product market fit when you're in a pre-seed stage, but you're constantly evaluating the market, and the market's constantly changing, and to suggest that people sort of they read a lecture at business school and they think it's linear, right? Like you do product market fit and then you get it and then you scale and then you add more features and then you make more money, and it's not linear, and A, the market changes, and B, what you learn about it changes significantly. And so it's not wrong to have learned something 3 years in that is an insight that tells you need to change the size or shape of your business, whether that's up or down. That's being a good entrepreneur, not being a bad one.
So I think that's a very interesting point, because I think when you're starting up a company, there's a very complicated trade-off between the expectations that investors you have of yourself and other people have of you, and the desire to build the business up quite quickly, and at the same time not add too much resource or expense. It's I found that the most difficult thing to do, because you set expectations. You have big dreams when you're an entrepreneur. You believe in yourself. You've got a clear view of what you're going to do, and things don't always work out quite how you anticipated them. Or
and sometimes and sometimes it's worth trying to make sure you don't get caught up in your own hype, right? Because if you think it's a great idea and you have a VC standing on the side, yeah, do it and pour money at it, then you go, yeah, everybody thinks it's great, but maybe you should try look at it from different perspectives, and okay, what is a balanced approach here? How much risk is it worth taking in building up the business, for instance,
so that's a good point. I mean, is those voices around the table are very crucial between the optimists and the pessimists. I think it's very important to have all those voices around the table. Because, as you say, if everybody's optimistic that this is the only route forward, then you may end up making the wrong resource choices at those moments. Will, what I found fascinating in our kind of conversation last week, you told me you hated being a CEO. Why was that?
Okay, I mean, I absolutely love our company, the team, and all the rest of it. That's what gets me up in the morning. Okay, but I think I've sort of pondered this ever since we spoke last week, and I think the analogy I would use, particularly given I love water and the waves and the rest of it, is you're the skipper of a raft, and you're going down some rapids, and there are crocodiles in the waters, and you've got to get your team all the way down this, right? So as the skipper, you're looking out for the rocks, you're obviously looking out for the crocodiles. You don't want this thing to turn over because everyone will die. And it's very exhilarating. And if you get out the bottom and you're profitable and everything's going well, then it's the fantastic journey. But whilst you're the skipper, your team is doing all the fun stuff. They're the ones paddling hard and hopefully in the direction you set. And they're looking at the view and they're looking at the water and they're thinking this wonderful. You don't tell them about the crocodiles, because if you do, that'll scare them off. And your job is, I very much see the job as a CEO is you've got to motivate people. You've got to provide that direction. You've got to make sure that they're fed, they're excited. As a startup, you're often picking, we have fantastic people, first from Cambridge, etc., coming to work for us, but we can't pay them the salaries they get in the city or what banks might offer. So you've got to motivate them in other ways. And invariably that means as a CEO, you end up doing the shit that nobody else wants to do. And you're still part of one big team, but it's the pressure's on you. And as Oliver says, if things go wrong, the buck stops with you. I mean, these people are dependent on you, and their livelihoods are dependent on you, and their dreams, their mortgages, their families, and you've got to hold that together, and that's hard. And I don't think there's all that much exciting to be a CEO. I mean, I hear people saying, I want to be a CEO. Absolutely, I do not want to be a CEO. And that's not to say that I shouldn't be. Right now, for this company, I think I'm the best person to be in that role, right? It's, at the end of the day, it's my vision. Well, it was initially my vision, but it's now increasingly a shared vision from the team. And, and I've got the drive, and I'm in the right position. I've got the background, and all the rest of it to sort of drive it forward. But it's not something I aspired to be. I didn't leave university and do a PhD or come out of that thinking, hell, I got to be a CEO. I mean, I think like many of the people here, I actually went for a job interview. I went for a company that's now since gone bankrupt. I came away from the interview thinking they don't actually know what they're doing. I'm sure I can make a better wave energy device than they can. I teamed up with UCL and we did some tests at UCL and came away from that going, yes, this is definitely better. And that sort of snowballed into a collection of things. It was suddenly, well, okay, can you patent this idea? Well, yes, you can. And then, okay, well, can I get some money? Can I find someone to give me some cash to fund this? So you're still a full-time job, and then you sort of start, mixing those two things together. And then sooner or later, someone gives you more money and you think, well, geez, I better, I've got to quit the main job and really focus on this. And then you start building your team around it and so on and so forth. But at no point did I think
on the description of CEO, Will, I mean, I just want to jump in a little bit here. The description of CEO for me is somebody who does the jobs that other people can't do, don't want to do, and sometimes they just and they screw up. It's not as glamorous as sometimes people make out. But I just want to bring in Oliver here. I noticed that you took a funding round in the USA, and a successful funding round in the USA. Did you give up on what was your experience in the UK that required you to go to the USA for funding?
So yeah, we incorporated. We're based in Cambridge. We incorporated the company first in the UK. After a little bit of time, we then decided to apply to and got into a US startup accelerator called Y Combinator. Y Combinator is based in Silicon Valley, and they're famous in the sort of software scene for doing things like Dropbox and stuff like that. Part of the requirement of doing Y Combinator was to do what's called a Delaware flip. So you create a US entity and you become a US sort of incorporated business, and that makes it very easy to fundraise in the US because you can then access US markets because they're investing in a US entity, and that's something we did, and we knew that was going to be our main decision about whether or not we took the offer of acceptance into Y Combinator was did we want to become a US top code company, and I tried I'm an engineer, so I made a scoring matrix of like whether or not we should make the decision at the time, and I've still got it. And ultimately, that scoring matrix sort of came down to, do I want to make it slightly easier for US investors or for UK investors? And to me, when I looked at it that way around, I went, it's no comparison, because I'm sorry for anyone that's on the call here, the funding market here is abysmal compared to what happens in the US, just in terms of like understanding, comprehension, risk appetite to build the size of company anyone wants to build. People in the UK, investors in the UK, want to build the smallest company that won't fail, I think is the way I would describe it. Like, they want to only fund the size of company that is big enough to be the minimum amount that it needs to be. There's almost no comprehension to like, why would I raise 3 times that amount and try and be bigger? It's like, well, yeah, but you only need to take 10 million in order to like hit your next set of milestones and not fail. Well, and there's no comprehension of a question, it's just it's a different perception of like what it means to build a company. There's like there's just an entirely different mindset about build. And I think for a deep technology company, personally, I think that mindset is that is where there's the biggest, like, that's where that mindset change makes the biggest difference. In the field that we're all in sort of deep tech companies where you have the potential to build something that could be, you know, sort of seminal or like industry defining in a field or a sector. And so we took that choice because we wanted to access US capital markets, and it's been very good for us. And I know other companies that did it, and I don't know any that didn't think it was a good idea.
Well, there's another example coming out of Cambridge. You obviously was a Cambridge a PhD, and Myriam was a research associate in the Cambridge system. But you stuck it out, and you got your funding through 2 or 3 different rounds, or in the UK. What was your experience? I mean, Oliver went to Y Combinator in the USA, but you've gone through some of the UK incubator and startup programs, I would say, even via the Judge. What's been your experience, Myriam?
So I started with Ignite at the Cambridge Business School, and I then joined the Accelerate Cambridge program at the Judge still. So Ignite was really good in the sense that during a week you just learned the basis of, you know, setting up a company and you know, and identifying your market and your value proposition, and really I would say start shaping what your technical idea could look like in terms of commercial application. And then the Accelerate program was, and I'm still in the Accelerate program, by the way, so that's just a really great program in the sense that you get support over a long period of time, meaning that you really build a network and a connection with some people that are really helping you through the different challenges you're facing as you're starting and building your company. So I met, you know, a lot of people who I'm, you know, still working with at this stage, and that was really good in that sense. And recently we've been involved in Start Codon, so the new healthcare accelerator in Cambridge, which was for 6 months. And I would say this was really a great program as well. It was very intense, getting a lot of mentoring and coaching, and really making sure that we are ready for our next round of funding. So preparing us for the next big fundraising. So we are in the pre-seed stage at Spirea, and the idea is in June 2021 to be ready for our seed round. And Start Codon has been great in connecting us to various investors, partners as well, because we in our business model, we aim to work with pharma and biotech companies. So getting this connection and the feedback already from you know, what we need to do in terms of developing our technology and our products. So that was really great in that sense. So in terms of funding, really was for me was Innovate UK, which was a very decisive moment for me, because I don't think I would be here if I didn't have this grant funding, because I think at this time was very early stage, my idea, and it was all about generating some proof of concept data. So that was a very good one. And then And then, yes, just working as well as with Cambridge Enterprise and Start Codon and angel investors around Cambridge is, I think, is really the Cambridge ecosystem, which is key here, I would say, in my case.
Okay.
Innovate UK are excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Will, you had a good experience with Innovate UK as well.
In total, between us and our partnering universities, etc., we've raised about 2.5 million through Innovate UK on a number of different programs. I mean, I know a lot of people have quibbles about Innovate UK and some of the ways that they sort of score and do things like this, but overall, I think Innovate UK is phenomenal. I mean, we certainly wouldn't be here without them.
Yeah.
And
Innovate are very good.
Yeah, the support they offer, even sort of they assign you a monitoring officer, and if you're lucky and you get a good monitoring officer, they almost become like a mentor. They will help you out and direct you to other things that are going on. And they're not supposed to tell you how to run your business or do anything like that, but they help connect dots. And that's as a company, I mean, if you were in a hub or something like this, I think we'd get a lot more connections, but we're not. We've got our own front door. We've sort of separated off, and there is a danger, particularly in the early days, of you becoming quite insular with what you're doing. And I think everything Innovate UK is doing around that is fantastic.
Boris, if you're listening, I mean, there's lots of nodding heads here when we're talking about Innovate UK. So please, Boris and the whole government, do look after what's happening at Innovate UK. Seems to be really crucial in pushing forward and seeding the best life science ideas here in the UK, so we don't have to send our best entrepreneurs to the USA to get funding. Oliver, your experience of Innovate UK?
Yeah, I'd heard horror stories about monitoring officers being, onerous and such, but I've not experienced it. We've had 3 different monitoring officers through a number of different Innovate projects. They've all been brilliant. One of them we now work with on a different program because they've all got other jobs. None of them is their full-time job. I've had very good experience with Innovate and their monitoring officers, and they seem to be. I think grant funding internationally is actually quite an interest. Like, we now as a company, we're a US headquartered. We have a research office in Canada, and our primary team is in the UK. We've chosen to keep our primary team here despite funding in the US because we can do excellent engineering development here. And Innovate have been a very good part of that. If you look at how grant funding works internationally, for instance, in Canada, it's almost impossible to get any grant funding that isn't 50% or more industry matched. In the UK, obviously, Innovate is 30% blanket. If you're in healthcare, things like NIH are 100% funded and very, very good as well, much like Innovate. And then the other thing to note actually is that US grant funding is entirely open to you if you're a UK company. You can apply for National Science Foundation, National Institute of Health. We've just got a $1 million National Institute of Health award, and it's nothing to do. They didn't know we had a US part of our entity when we applied. We got it as the British company, and so Innovate are really good, and I would recommend to everyone that you can also look at NIH, NSF. They're all available to you as a foreign entity.
Fiona, I've always thought of you as a master fundraiser, and you're the landscape very well. What are your views on this on the subject of fundraising?
So who was that to? Me?
Fiona.
Yeah.
Well, the first thing on the UK-US discussion, I think it's important to mention, in case there's any entrepreneurs on the call that are looking to fundraise, that if you'd first choose to take investment in the UK, it might actually make it more difficult later to take money from the US. So we had the after doing well, not in the very first seed round, but the second time we went round for a fundraise, we did probe some US investors whether they were interested, but they just took a look at our cap table and said, oh no, that's not interesting. And the third time round, they're just like, just don't even bother us. So because there's such a big difference in the way that they structure their investments as well, is that if you first take UK investment, then the way you then get the structure of your cap table and the proportion that is taken up by investors makes it not attractive to US investors. So
yeah, you need to think about not just this round, but what you want. Like how many rounds do you need as a company before you're revenue generating, or like at what point are you going to just investors who are just investing on the basis of growth and revenue and growth, and you need to plan that out. And being in a US capital market is not ideal for everyone, but I think if you're trying to do something where you're planning on a multiple rounds of quite like vision science-led funding, then that can be. Then I've had a good experience with US investors in that regard.
Will, we had a lively discussion last week on about crowdfunding versus kind of seed angel funding in the UK, and one group was good for you and one was not. Can you just kind of narrate your experience there?
I think it's. I mean, I think I'm probably quite different to some of the other partners in this. Speakers in the sense that. I mean, although we're working in Mexico, we're not. We've raised all our funding in the UK, and we only looked around the UK, and we had. I mean, I think like everybody, we went through an awful lot of these sort of VC/angel seminars where you go and do a 2-minute pitch or a 5-minute pitch, etc. And overall, I think coming away from that experience, I think it was just a complete and utter waste of time. I mean, I wouldn't advocate it. I think different sectors may be more so than ours, but for what we're doing, we're not a sort of in an internet company that's going to have triple-digit growth in a couple of years, or even double every couple of months. I mean, we're in light engineering, but we're in civil engineering, and things take a longer time to sort of reach a point of profitability. And I think also I don't fully know what the mindset of a lot of angel investors are, but on the whole, I think the people who go to these are looking for, it's a bit like going to an auction. You're looking for a bargain. You're looking to see that investor who's got something that's just completely way out there, who's undervalued what they're doing and hasn't a clue, and you can step in and grab a piece. It's probably a bit like Dragon's Den in that sense. And whereas what we actually wanted, what we've ended up with, is we end up going to CrowdCube. We did a crowdfunding round. We were very nervous going into that. We were like, is this going to work? So of course, there's quite a lot of cost in just setting up and doing the videos and a lot of the things around that. But it worked really well for us. I mean, we were just under 200% over raised. We closed that out just in the right time prior to COVID-19. So we're in a good state now going forward, given the current crisis. And great thing for us is that we've actually now got 700 investors. Fortunately, they're all packaged away into one big nominee account. So hopefully that won't scare off US investors in the future, but we'll see about that. But I've now got a collection of advocates. I've got lawyers. I've got people who are going on holiday, or used to were going on holiday. And they ring in to us. They tell us what they're doing. They look over legal documents for us. We've got this community of people helping us. But in part, that's because they were inspired by what we're doing to restore nature. We're trying to grow reefs. We're trying to get corals back into areas where they haven't been. So there's a huge package of work there. But it is not always about. I think a lot of our investors are not just looking for a quick buck. They're looking for that sort of social responsibility. They're looking for, can we actually give something back to society? And that's
so on that point, social responsibility. I mean, I think that was a really fascinating insight of your experience of crowdfunding, by the way. And I think that is quite untypical in life sciences. It was quite very worthwhile hearing those stories. In terms of the point about social mission. Because a number of you kind of done fairly in-depth study, during your PhD or advanced research, and what I've seen is that people are quite gripped by a sense of social mission and making an impact on the earth, in your case, or nature, healthcare, science, technology, and how that can impact people, nature, the planet. And how did you transition? This is a question to all of you, or anyone can jump in. How did you kind of transition that mindset in your PhD when you are at the edge of doing something very different? And how do you able to translate that sense of mission into a business? Fiona, you started off very much as a social enterprise, and you were running 2 different entities, and then you decided to just probably trying to do too many things and then focus on the business enterprise. You just want to give us a little bit of how you started out and what you were passionate about in terms of the social mission, and then how were you able to translate that into the elements of a business organization?
Yeah, absolutely. So, so from the work I had done in my research and being in the genomics research community and engaging with lots of genomic scientists, there's the problem that I saw everywhere was that there was not enough data access. So it was part of my big passion was to fix this thing that was missing. There's like this lack of infrastructure to enable the researchers to get access to data, to use it efficiently, to get to their results faster. And from having a strong idea of the impact I wanted to make, from that came the vision of, well, we want to make a platform. This platform can facilitate the search and exchange of data between the researchers. But then came the question of the implementation, because a charity was my first choice, because I thought there's a strong impact mission behind it. But the unfortunate bit about putting it, trying to get it off the ground as a charity is that the only way you can get the funding to get it off the ground as a charity is by grant funding or donations, right? And grant funding, well, I can tell you now, if you've ever considered, but you won't get any grant funding if you're a newly established organization with no track record of doing what it is that you're planning to do in your grant. So that was just out of the question immediately. And then donations, well, we didn't have like coral reefs or crying babies and like something on the front poster child that would get people's attention for donating money to our cause, because making infrastructure for genetic researchers doesn't sound like the kind of thing that pulls the heartstrings for people to donate. So it quickly became clear that, okay, the donation route is not really a viable one either. And it was only when, okay, well, there has to be a sustainable business model around the solution anyway. Well, if that sustainable business model means that there's some the revenue going round and there's some profit coming out of it, well then why not package it into a social enterprise, which means it's a commercial entity but with a social mission driving it. So that's what we then...
Do you feel you get enough bandwidth or attention or kind of traction in terms of the social mission now you're structured as a fully funded business enterprise?
Yeah, so I say this a lot, but I think it really does make a difference to the people working with you to achieve what you're trying to achieve, because they know and understand the why behind the business. Because there's a difference between, oh, I'm creating a business from my garage because I want to be a millionaire, or I'm actually trying to save more cancer patients from dying of their disease because there's viable treatments that can go to market faster, right? Then there's suddenly a reasoning for the whole team to work together to achieve what you set out to do. And I think that makes a big difference in hiring and motivating the team.
Can I just pitch in something here as well? I mean, just in terms of the, I mean, we as one of the companies that we can play to those heartstrings, because we are trying to save the little fish and the corals and stuff. And we look very hard at the idea of being an NGO or being not necessarily a charity, but getting funding in that way. And without doubt, some of our investors have very much seen us as a charity. They said, like, we'll throw them a couple of $100 it doesn't really matter. They're gonna go and save a fish or two. That's good. Okay. But I think if you look around the world, there are hundreds of companies, institutions and foundations that are trying to restore corals. None of them are very big. None of them, they're all struggling. They're all fighting for money all the time. Loads of them ring us up all the time asking for pockets of money because they haven't fundamentally thought what is the actual fundamental business model. And whilst corals, and in our case, corals are hugely beneficial to the world. I could go on for hours talking about what corals do for us, right? But you've got to actually get back. Where is the money? How are you actually going to get somebody to fund this? Because if you can solve that link and you can join the dots, then you can go back to your VCs, then you can go to your banks, and you can get almost an unlimited amount of money. So if we want to make a big impact in our case, to the marine environment and to what's going on with corals, you've got to join those dots. You've got to show people, well, actually, there is a viable business model here. And for us, we really unwrapped it and said, okay, what are we fundamentally doing? Well, there are hotels, they've got beaches, the beaches are being washed away. We need to put something in place to stop those beaches washing away. But we need to do something which is ecological and nice, so therefore it brings back fish and then does all the coral. So we still get all the secondary benefits, but the primary goal for us is save a beach, because that's what tourists want. So that's where the money is. Yeah.
In agreement with Will Moore,
escalate
I've
from
always
there.
said that you don't get, like, it's nice, it's helpful, it's mission aligning, it's motivating to have like that kind of like social mission or like environmental or in our case health mission, but it doesn't write any checks, and it doesn't like it doesn't keep people, it doesn't keep the business going. And so it's like, it's a really nice cherry on top of running a good business rather than a substitute for it.
Totally agree.
Okay, Myriam, I mean, Fiona's doing a lot of work which is collecting data to support clinical trials, and you've got a technology which could be more selective, which could be much better than chemotherapy, antibody drug conjugates. Now, obviously, there's a huge social mission here in treating cancer, and now you've migrated that work out of the lab, into a commercial venture. And how are you kind of balancing or integrating the social mission and the business missions?
Well, I mean, I think I don't oppose the both. I think it's the same, because I guess I'm just thinking what would have happened, right? So if I didn't set up Spirea, I think probably my idea would have just stayed in a drawer, and I wouldn't have done any more work on it. I think it's the drive of saying, well, I think this idea can have a real impact for patients, and let's just take the journey of making this happen. I mean, I would have probably done, I think so. The only difference here is when you are in a company setup, right? So if I do my research in the lab and I have an idea, I would do it, and then I would publish papers, so I would be a bit more open source, and I won't think twice about collaborating with a lot of, groups and people. Whereas here, because you have a company, you need to think about all the IP, and you need to take an approach where you secure your idea. You're trying to make sure that you have a strong base in terms of getting your technology out there. So for sure, right? Maybe I could have said, okay, I do that in academic labs, and I just publish it, and it's out there, and then there would be a group somewhere which can, maybe something better. I mean, I don't know, but I think ideally that's my idea. Well, my idea. So that's something I'm really passionate about. So I think I was really passionate about getting that out, and I think the best way of doing it was to do it in a commercial setup. And eventually this would be published, right?
Did you ever? Yeah. Okay. So did you ever have any difficulty in when you're in the lab doing the research? You're there to benefit humanity ultimately, and obviously do a good job of your research. And when you're in a business, the technology, you're protecting that intellectual property for the benefit of an investor. Did you ever have any issues with that, or did you think that the second model was a means to achieving your ambition and your?
Yeah, I mean, I think. Yeah, I think in a way, because there's nothing preventing me to well, I mean, I would tell the world what I'm doing. I would publish my research, right? We're not doing this at this stage because we have some patent application ongoing, but it's going to be out there, and yes, indeed, Spirea would be the only one, exploiting that idea to start with. But I think eventually it's going to be hard, and it might, inspire other, groups to as well, come up with their idea to solve, how you would treat the patient with that kind of approach. So I think, yeah, that's why I wouldn't oppose it. But to me, that works. I don't think there's anything I'm not feeling happy with about, setting up a company and exploiting my ideas through IP. Yeah, I think that's fine.
Oliver, when we first met, I mean, you inspired me with stories of veterans who had, lost limbs, and how you wanted to help and support them, have a better quality life by helping the technology rather than just having a limb plugged in. You wanted to be able to communicate from the brain into the limbs, and it's a very inspiring story that started you off.
Yeah, I think I agree entirely with Myriam, and and sort of partly what I was saying in response to Will's question there. Like I left academia because I wanted to make an impact. Like the commercial entity was the way of doing it. It wasn't like a trade-off between, oh, let's go make less world impact by being in a company. I left to go start a company so that, because to me impact is measured in how many people you help. And if the best I could have hoped, like when I was 22, I thought I would end up being an academic professor working in neurotechnology, and ultimately if that's what you do, you're probably limited at something like, you're limited at getting grant funding to do a 10-patient trial to show that your kind of device and method is working. And to me, like, helping 10 people doesn't really cut the mustard. Like, if you spend your life and a load of other people's time and their lives working on something and build on all this work of other people previous to you, like the fact that you've given something to 10 people, you haven't really lifted the bar yet. And when we first met Prashant in 2015, I was talking then, and it's no different now. There are 0 people in the world with brain controlled limbs that could buy one. And if you have an amputation today, you still can't go get one unless you happen to get yourself enrolled in an academic study. And that's not good enough for neurotechnology. Neurotechnology has so far not translated into being helping people, and in order to do that, you need companies that make products that are commercially viable, such that they help people while in there's some being an economic incentive which gets them out there. And so in our case, we're pushing in that direction to leverage the human nervous system to treat disease, and of which amputation is one. And to me, it's always about having, like, it's about helping like 10,000 people, not 10. I won't feel any success out of treating 10 people in an early clinical trial. Success is putting something out there that people continue to subscribe to when you're not paying them to do it.
Well, look, I would throw that on this point of just wrapping up this social mission element. I just want to congratulate all 4 of you on the drive and the guts you've shown, to take your work. All of you have taken your work, in the lab, relevant work in the lab or in your research work out into companies. You've had clearly all 4 of you had a mission to kind of to take that to a more global impact in terms of the work you do. So you all 4 of you have really inspired me over the years, and I'm glad to know all 4 of you, really. And I think that it also, the essence, I think, also of a CEO, CSO, co-founder is somebody who actually is driven by a sense of impact or mission. I think those are the most successful co-founders or CEOs. I think anyone who's driven by money, I don't think they really are entrepreneurs in the truest sense of the words. But the 4 of you kind of really embody what I think make great entrepreneurs, and the kind of talent we're always looking for in O2h and O2h Ventures and our co-work studios as well. Now, I've got a few questions that have come in just in these last few minutes, so I just want to give that a little of attention. And I'm going to fire it out to anybody who wants to jump in. Does anybody have a regret so far in their kind of journey from deep research into co-founder, CEO, CSO that they want to share? Anybody got any big regrets? Or something that are done differently? No regrets? Je ne regrette rien. Myriam? Anybody else? No regrets?
I think if I had a crystal ball, if I had a crystal ball, 3 years ago, I would have probably, done things faster. I mean, I don't know, you just think, you start and you're a bit cautious to start with because you're not sure where you're going. You have so much to learn, and a bit more, I would have maybe tried to do things faster and have a bit more faith in what I'm doing. I think, it's just learning. It's quite scary when you start, just not sure what you're doing. I think, I would have that as only regret. Yeah.
Okay. And what advice would you, the flip to that question is, what advice would you offer anybody kind of moving from kind of hardcore research to kind of being the leader of a commercial organization?
I think it's being surrounded by great people. I mean, I think the network, in my case, you know, the people I met during my journey is key. I think you need to be part of an ecosystem. You need to have people around you who are there and you can talk to when you are facing some challenges. So yeah, people.
In addition to that, in addition to the people, I mean, it's pretty much any company in my mind is built on its people. You know, I know AI and various other things are coming in gradually, but without a good team, you're treading water uphill very slowly. You know, it's hard. But the other thing I would really stress, and I know this is something that Innovate UK in particular tries hard to get, but people, you know, and we certainly did in the early days, is you gloss over the market research. You absolutely have got to understand your clients, who's, you know, there's this saying out there, you know, that somebody's got your money. You've just got to go out and find it and get it. You know, you've got to understand who's got the money, where it is, and what are you going to create in order to attract them to that, and really focus on creating a great product. As others have said, absolutely don't look at, you know, you don't go into this game because you want to get rich. You go in because you want to solve a problem and create a really fantastic product, but I really focus on understanding who your market is, even if it takes you 5 years to do that.
Yeah, I was going to say something quite similar to that in terms of, you know, to start, like the first answer is go do it, and then the second answer, like the first part of it is just go do it, right? Like it's great, go do it. The second part of it is like it's like Fiona mentioned earlier, like, you know, you need to like not only drink your own Kool-Aid, you need to sort of work out like, okay, you have some area of research that you are like a massive expert in, and you believe there is like a commercial usage of that that is sensible and will be important and like, you know, change and improve how things are done in a particular sector, and then your sort of follow on, your first question once you've said yes, I'm going to go do it, is like, okay, can I convince someone else with like a, you know, with capital or whether they're a customer or a VC, that this is a sensible thing to be doing, and so to me, like I you know, I never took like a family and friends round, because I to me the bar is like, if I can't convince someone who's an expert in funding deep technology companies to fund it, then I'm doing something wrong, right? And so I have to like like I have to meet that bar, and I have to be able to like convey that story and show where the commercial opportunity is, and that it's not 15 years out, that there is a, you know, there's a 2-year, 3-year version which allows you to grow into the 5, 10, 15-year version. And so yeah, 1A, do it, and then 1B, work out how you're going to convince other people that it's a good idea.
Just last question then before I get cut off. What and anybody of you can pick this up, was there something you had to, what was most useful when you went from research to CEO, and what did you have to unlearn? So you don't all have to answer, but somebody wants to just give us an answer on behalf of all of you, that would be interesting.
Resilience. I think what you learn when doing your PhD or doing research is resilience, and I think that's something then it's also quite good when you're starting a company and you're building a company.
Thank you. And what did somebody have to unlearn something?
I would just say you can't do everything yourself. You've got to, you really, you know, PhDs tend to be slightly sort of solo in some ways, and you become resilient in just doing everything. And it's at some point you just have to accept 80% is good enough, and you just let everyone else get on with it.
Thank you. Fiona, you just unmuted, so you want to come in?
Yeah, just looping back to the advice from before, and then looping back to when we talked about grants. So the one thing to be careful about grants is that it's very good to spend some money on some R&D that you need to do, but just be careful that it also locks you in to actually deliver on that particular grant. So you need to look at whether it's suitable for your organization at the point in time you are, because if you're at a point in time when you need to be nimble and flexible, for example, to pivot to match your target customer, well then if you're stuck into a grant which keeps you doing the same thing for a year in order to deliver on that grant, you're actually in trouble.
Yeah.
So that's
Time is money there. Oliver, last word to you.
Yeah, I learn to delegate, find people that are better at things than you are, because there's you know, there are an infinite number of aspects to running a company, and you're probably good at one of them, maybe 5, and so like the other 95, like find people that are better than you at running them, which there are millions of, and get those people to own those things, and you know, hand them over. No dictatorial needed here.
Well, look, thank you once again to the 4 of you for a really enjoyable, fascinating session. I loved every minute. I knew that this 1 hour would fly by, and it absolutely has. Congratulations on everything that you're doing, and I wish you the best of luck and for the missions and the journeys that you're on. And if you need any of us, any support, as always, from O2H in the future, then we're always here for you, and to support in any way we can. We love finding people like you and working alongside you guys. So really, thanks very much and well done.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for having us.
Take care. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks for having us.